During a trip to Thailand, my colleague took me to a hidden rooftop bar, Smirking. Here, what happens at night stays a secret. I thought it was a joke, until I saw him disappear into a private lounge with a local woman. Hours later, I slipped a note under his hotel room door. Check the news. When he opened it the next morning, his face went pale, because his secret was now a headline. During a trip to Thailand for work, my colleague Mark took me to a hidden rooftop bar. I didn't think much of it at first. Bangkok was full of places like this, dimly lit, full of expensive whiskey, jazz music playing in the background. But the way he smirked before we walked in stuck with me. Here, what happens at night stays a secret, he said. I thought it was just a line. A joke. I laughed. I shouldn't have. The place wasn't on any tourist maps. You wouldn't just stumble upon it. To get there, we had to take an old elevator in a rundown building that looked completely ordinary from the outside. No signs, no indication that something was happening upstairs. When the elevator doors opened, it felt like stepping into another world. Soft golden lights. Velvet curtains. The smell of cigars and something floral. The music was low, meant to blend into the background, meant to make conversation easy. Mark walked in like he had been there before. I should probably explain something about Mark. He wasn't just a coworker. He was one of those guys who seemed to have everything figured out. Older, confident, rich. He was the kind of guy who always had the best travel perks, who knew the real places in every city. The kind of guy who could walk into any room and make people listen. He was also married. I met his wife at a company event. Sophie. She was the type of woman who made everyone feel welcome, the kind that made you believe her life was as perfect as it looked on social media. They had a little girl, maybe 5 or 6. I remember Sophie showing me pictures at that event, smiling like she had everything she ever wanted. And now here was Mark, slipping into a private lounge with a woman who definitely wasn't Sophie. She was young. Beautiful. She wore a tight red dress and heels that clicked against the floor as she walked. She leaned in when she spoke to him, her fingers brushing his arm, her lips close to his ear. I watched him go with her. I sat there for a while, staring at my drink, trying to process it. Maybe I had misunderstood. Maybe it was just business. Maybe she was just being friendly. But I knew better. Mark didn't come back out for hours. At some point I left. I couldn't sit there anymore. I walked through the hot Bangkok streets, trying to shake the feeling in my gut. Maybe it wasn't my problem. Maybe it wasn't my place. But I couldn't let it go. Back at the hotel, I searched for the bar online. Nothing. No website, no reviews. Just a few vague mentions on forums, people talking about it. Members only. Spot where certain transactions happen behind closed doors. I kept digging. That's when I found the news article. Just a week ago, another rooftop bar, one just like this, had been raided by undercover police. Foreign businessmen caught with women who weren't just there for entertainment. Some of those women had ties to people you don't want to be involved with in Thailand. I stared at the screen. I didn't know if it was the same bar. But it didn't matter. I grabbed the hotel's notepad and wrote 3 words. Check the news. I folded the paper, walked down the hall, and slid it under Mark's door. Then I went to my own room and tried to sleep. I couldn't. The next morning, I was already at the hotel's breakfast buffet when Mark walked in. His usual cocky energy was gone. His face was pale, his suit slightly wrinkled, like he hadn't slept. He walked past the coffee station without grabbing a cup, something I had never seen him do. He sat down across from me and pulled out his phone. His hands weren't steady. He scrolled for a few seconds, then stopped. His fingers tightened around the screen. He looked up at me. His voice was low. How did you know? I sipped my coffee and shrugged. Just keeping up with the news. Mark exhaled sharply, rubbing his face. He looked like a man trying to decide if he was still in control of the situation, or if everything had already slipped through his fingers. I let the silence hang. I had expected him to get angry, maybe threaten me, maybe try to play it off. But he just sat there, staring at his phone, his knee bouncing under the table. Then he stood up, grabbed his plate, and walked straight to the trash, dumping the untouched food. Something was wrong. I thought he'd panic about his wife finding out, about his job, about me knowing his secret. But the way his eyes darted around the room, the way his shoulders tensed when someone walked past, this was something else. Something bigger. I wasn't sure if I wanted to know what it was. That's when I noticed the man. He was sitting alone at a table near the window, pretending to read a newspaper. The only problem was, he hadn't turned the page once. And when Mark moved, so did his eyes. I pretended not to notice. Mark grabbed my arm as we walked out of the restaurant. His grip was tight. We need to talk. Now. We took the elevator up in silence. He didn't speak until we were in my hotel room with the door locked. Then he did something that made my stomach drop. He pulled out his phone, opened his email, and showed me a message. No sender. No subject. Just a photo. Of him. Inside the lounge. And another photo. Of me. Sitting at the bar. Watching. My blood ran cold. Mark ran a hand through his hair, pacing. I don't know who sent this, but if they know about me, they know about you. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. He turned to me, voice low and urgent. We have a problem. I stared at the screen, my pulse hammering in my ears. The photo of me at the bar, it wasn't blurry, it wasn't taken by accident. Someone had been watching. Someone wanted me to know they had been watching. I swallowed hard. You think it's the bar? Mark shook his head, rubbing his temples. I don't know. Could be them. Could be someone else. But this isn't just some warning, man. This is a message. I exhaled slowly. What are they saying? He turned the phone back to me. They're saying we don't leave Thailand in one piece. A cold sweat broke out on my back. For the first time since I had met him, Mark looked scared. Not just rattled. Not just covering up some personal mistake. This was real fear. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. He started pacing again. I've been here before. A lot. I've met people. Done things. Nothing illegal, but this bar isn't just a bar. It's tied to someone. He clenched his jaw. Someone who doesn't like outsiders asking too many questions. I tensed. I wasn't asking questions. You were watching. He snapped. That's enough. I sat down, my mind racing. We don't even know if this is real. It could be someone messing with you. Mark turned his phone back around and tapped the screen. Another email. A video. He hit play. The footage was grainy, like it came from a security camera. It was the hallway outside our rooms. From last night. Me. Sliding the note under his door. A time stamp in the corner. Whoever sent it had access to the hotel's cameras. I felt my stomach drop. Mark was breathing hard now, his hands shaking. This isn't about my wife. This isn't about my job. This is about the fact that we walked into something we weren't supposed to see. I ran a hand through my hair. So what do we do? He exhaled sharply. We get out of here. I nodded. Then his phone buzzed. Another message. This one wasn't an email. It was a text. Too late. 3 sharp knocks on the hotel door. The knocks on the door weren't rushed. They were slow. Deliberate. Someone wanted us to know they were there. Mark and I exchanged a look. He was already moving toward the window, pulling the curtain back just enough to peek outside. I stayed frozen in place, my breath caught in my chest. The knocks came again. 3, just like before. I checked my phone. No service. No Wi-Fi. Mark cursed under his breath. Who is it? I called, trying to keep my voice steady. Silence. A long pause. Then, in a heavily accented voice, a man spoke from the other side. Sir, we need to talk. Open the door. Mark shook his head violently, mouthing no, no, no. I swallowed hard. Who are you? You don't need to know that, the voice said. Just open the door. I stepped back. Mark was already backing toward the adjoining room. We need to get out of here. I barely had time to nod before the door handle rattled. Someone was testing it. Mark grabbed his bag. Emergency stairs. Now. We moved fast. I didn't even check to see if the door was still holding before I slipped into the stairwell behind Mark. I could hear voices now, more than one, speaking in low, urgent tones. We ran down the stairs, skipping steps, my heart pounding in my ears. On the 3rd floor, we paused. Mark pressed against the door, listening. Then, carefully, he nudged it open a crack. The hallway was empty. We stepped out. Mark grabbed my arm. We split up. What? I hissed. They're watching us. If we stay together, we're a bigger target. Get to the airport. Don't stop for anything. I'll meet you back in London. I hesitated. Everything in me screamed that splitting up was the worst possible idea. But I could see it in his face. This wasn't a discussion. Go, he said. Then he turned and walked in the opposite direction. I stood there for a half-second too long, then forced my feet to move. I kept my head down as I moved through the crowded streets, every nerve in my body on high alert. I could still hear Mark's voice in my head, get to the airport. I was halfway there when I spotted them. 2 men, both in dark suits, standing near a food stall. One was pretending to scroll on his phone. The other was just watching the street. I ducked into a side alley. I wasn't being paranoid. I was being followed. I tried to stay calm, but my hands were shaking. I checked my phone again, still no service. I couldn't call anyone. I couldn't check my flight status. I had to keep moving. I cut through side streets, zigzagging through the city. Every time I thought I had lost them, I spotted another dark-suited figure, lingering just a little too long near a storefront, pretending not to see me. This wasn't just a warning anymore. This was a hunt. I don't remember exactly how I made it to the airport. I must have looked insane, sweating, checking over my shoulder every few seconds, moving like a man who thought every stranger was out to get him. Because they were. The moment I stepped into the terminal, I exhaled a shaky breath. Crowds. Cameras. Security. I kept walking, my eyes scanning for Mark. Nothing. I checked my phone again. Finally, bars. A single message popped up. Flight delayed. Change of plans. Meet me at gate 47. My stomach twisted. Something felt wrong. I turned around slowly, scanning the terminal. That's when I saw him. Mark. Not at gate 47. Not in line for security. He was near the exit, talking to one of the men in a suit. My breath caught in my throat. He wasn't arguing. He wasn't running. He was shaking hands. I didn't move. I just stood there staring. Mark hadn't been running. He had been leading me here. The realization hit me like a gut punch. Every decision, every panicked move, it hadn't been to escape. It had been to isolate me. I was alone now. And that was exactly what they wanted. Mark turned slightly, and for just a moment, our eyes met. His face was unreadable. Not scared. Not guilty. Just resigned. Then he nodded once. A small, subtle nod. And the men in suits started walking toward me. I don't remember making the choice to run. 1 second I was frozen, and the next I was sprinting, weaving through people, ignoring the startled shouts as I shoved past luggage and airport staff. I wasn't thinking, I was just moving, acting on sheer survival instinct. Security saw the commotion and stepped in, raising their hands, trying to control the chaos. That gave me enough of a gap to slip past, my heart slamming against my ribs. I didn't stop until I was in the bathroom, locking myself in a stall, forcing my breathing to slow. I needed a plan. Fast. I checked my phone. One new message. From a number I didn't recognize. Get out of the airport. Now. I didn't hesitate. I don't know how I made it out of there. I barely remember the steps, just flashes of movement. A side exit. A cab I overpaid. The driver looking at me like he knew I was in trouble but not wanting to ask questions. I kept expecting the doors to burst open, for men in suits to drag me out. But nothing happened. Not that night. It's been 6 months. I never saw Mark again. No one at work questioned his absence. No big announcements, no farewell emails. It was like he had never existed. I kept waiting for something to happen. For a knock on my door. For a message. For someone to let me know I wasn't imagining all of it. But nothing came. Sometimes I wonder if I was just a loose end. If they even cared about me, or if I had been part of something I'll never understand. Sometimes I wonder if Mark is still out there. And sometimes, late at night, I wonder what would have happened if I had opened that hotel door. I don't think I would have made it out.